If you find a winning lottery ticket, is it yours for keeps? How about an abandoned computer chair? Or even pieces of lost treasure? Intuitively, you might be inclined to say, well, yes, obviously, finders, keepers, losers, weepers, or possession is 9/10 of the law. But in practice, things are not quite that straightforward, and here's why. The main law governing this area, the Theft Act 1968, says that the act of theft will have taken place if you take somebody else's property with the deliberate intention of permanently depriving somebody else of it. The main exceptions to that rule are if somebody else gives you property, or you reasonably believe they've given you the property to have, or where you take reasonable steps to try and reunite a piece of lost property with its owner, or where such reasonable steps can't be taken. Now, we could debate the meaning of the term reasonable steps for hours, but basically the key difference you need to know about is between whether something has been mislaid, temporarily put in the wrong place by somebody with the intent of taking back, or abandoned, basically left somewhere, never to be picked up again in perpetuity, in all likelihood. It sounds quite arbitrary, but there is an important difference. Take, for example, money. If you found a lost coin in the middle of the street, lots of people milling about, or nobody around for ages, no obvious sign of who that money could have belonged to, you can't really take the reasonable steps, therefore it's probably yours to have legally. But if you're in an indoor environment, like a shop, the reality is usually very different. In 2017, a woman in Stoke-on-Trent was ordered to pay £175 for pocketing a £20 note a customer had dropped while using a cash machine. She was caught doing this on CCTV, so clearly she had the chance to take the reasonable steps, but didn't. What she should have done in that situation was give it to the shop, or to a lost property unit, or even a police station to help reunite the money with its original owner. And as a general rule, if an item reported by you as lost property is not claimed for more than 2 months and it's still there, then you may claim it as your own, because at that point it's considered abandoned. You see what I mean? Now, of course, with many items, it's not always immediately obvious who owns something. But with, say, the lottery ticket, well, that's definitely traceable. Apart from the fact that this has a QR code on it, which unfortunately has become unusable due to wear and tear in the paper, there's also a date and a code on it, which is clearly identifiable to a particular store, at a particular place, on a particular day and time. In 2009, a Wiltshire couple were given a suspended jail sentence for picking up a lottery ticket that had been dropped on the floor of a shop in Swindon, that another woman later reported as missing. Quite an important detail, because that ticket went on to win £30,000. Interestingly, the defence lawyer in that case said, and I quote, "It is important for the public to know that finders, keepers, losers, weepers is not true and never was true." Really? I think the original owners of the artefacts in the British Museum might have something to say about that. But anyway. That brings us to pieces of treasure. For the purposes of this video, these old £2 coins are portraying the role of treasure. This is governed by a law called the Treasure Act 1996. Basically, what counts as treasure is not something that's washed up on the sea. That's usually considered wreck, which has to be reported to someone called the receiver of wreck. The basic definition of treasure looks like this. I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but basically, if something is more than 300 years old, or it's near a site where other treasure has previously been discovered, then there is a good chance it may in fact be treasure. You're legally required to report it to, curiously enough, the coroner within 14 days of finding it, or within 14 days of first realising that something is in fact treasure. And when treasure is found, it's usually by metal detector, so you are expected to have the permission of the landowner or the Secretary of State that's relevant if you're digging on a special archaeological site. Oh, and incidentally, archaeologists are not allowed to claim treasure as their own, which kind of makes sense. Whether or not something is valuable as treasure really depends on the market value and its historical significance. If it's decided by the museums and the coroner that something is either not historically significant enough or it doesn't have much of a market value, then usually it will be returned to you within 28 days. If there's a reward, then it may be you get one, but it can also be paid out partially to the landowner as well, so probably something to bear in mind. And if your conduct is deemed to have been dishonest, then your potential reward may be reduced or nullified. Now, obviously, this is not a substitute for legal advice, and you can find out more information through the sources in the description. So, the idea of the magical abandoned lottery win or magical treasure trove isn't quite all it's cracked up to be, but it is a salient reminder of the importance of good coordination, planning, and personal financial management. Maybe with this information, you'll soon learn that the real treasure was inside you the whole time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a bit. Knock that.